So in this video, we are going to learn the most complicated and yet the most confusing part, and also it's most often asked in your interviews. That is closures, right? Because people are having a lot of difficulty in understanding this. So that's what I'm here for, right? So let us understand closures by a simple example, so that you can answer this question in any interviews without any hesitation. All right, so let's create a simple example to demonstrate. Let's create a closure first of all. Okay, so let's call this counter. Okay, a very simple example. So counter, and set this to a function. Okay, so I'll just tell you what closures exactly are, and then we are going to like learn step by step. Okay, I'll just show you what actually happens within a closure. So let's create a variable inside this function called count. Let's use let, because we are going to mutate it. So count, and set this initially to 0, and this will actually return another function which is anonymous. Okay, so this will actually increment this count over here. Okay, so wait, you might be thinking, how is this possible? Because it is not even within inside the scope. Okay, scope of this function. So that's what is the concept of closures, which I'll be explaining. So let us increment the count inside this function, and let's have a look at the console of the value of count. Okay, so count like this. And okay, so this is a function which explains the closure. Okay, so which is a function which returns another function. Okay, so let's create a instance of this function. So I'm going to call this increment. Okay, and set this to we are just going to call this counter function right here. So counter like this. So this in turn returns another function, right? So we can also call the increment function inside this. So if I call this multiple times, it is going to run this function multiple times, and it is going to increment the count. Okay, so we don't know whether it will increment or not, so let's check that out. So I'm going to call this increment function a couple of times like this, and I just now want to look at the console of this count. You might think that since this is not inside the scope of this counter object, the counter function, it is not going to increment this, it is going to return undefined. Okay, so let's check the result, and then like we'll just do the discussion. All right, so I am using Node.js in order to run our files locally instead of in the browser. Okay, so that we can have a JavaScript runtime here itself. So let's do node and then the file name. So that is closures. Okay, so there we see the result. Okay, so initially we thought that it would return undefined, but you see that it is successfully able to increment the counter. So why is this? Why is this behavior? So this behavior is actually called a closure. Okay, which you in real life might not implement such kind of feature, but you might come across certain situations where you might find that yes, this is a closure. Okay, so you need to understand how it works behind the scenes, so that you can get to know how the code works, and do some manipulations in it. So what is happening here is, when we call this counter function, it is going to place the function into our call stack. Okay, so once it's placed, it is going to place another function which it is returning. Okay, so even though this function is returned, okay, already it's returned a value. Okay, the function, this outer function, okay, it is already popped off the call stack. Okay, so it has already returned. So how in the world like it is able to increment this variable over here? Okay, so you know what, it has certain memory, okay, stored behind it. Okay, so that is the main concept of closures. Okay, you might be thinking, why is this behavior? So this is a concept which the developers have deliberately created, so that we do not pollute the global environment. Let's say I create this count in outside over here. Even though I will be able to mutate this, but I will pollute the global environment. But this is just a small code. But as my code grows bigger and bigger, we will be having a lot of variables within our global execution context, right? So that is why we developers have introduced this concept of closure, so that we can only limit the variable only inside certain functions, right? So this is the behavior of closure. So even though I repeat that this function has returned, it has already have some memory stored behind it, so that it will be able to successfully increment this count and log it to the console. Okay, so that is the behavior of console, sorry, the closures. So how many ever times I increment this, okay, so it will be able to successfully increment this counter. So if I show you that once again, you see that it is able to increment the count of this variable. Okay, so this is all about closures. I hope this example was helpful so that you can answer this question in your interviews. And let's see another example or some more tutorials in the upcoming videos. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, so please go ahead and do that for some more valuable content just like this, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.